All right, everyone, thanks so much for being here today for the Ontario Materials Marketplace launch. We are excited that you are able to join us. This is a reminder to keep yourself muted if you're not talking, and to keep your video off when and if convenient to avoid distractions for other participants. With that, I'm excited to hand it off to Mark Fisher, our CEO.
Thanks, Alicia, and thank you everyone for being with us this afternoon for what we hope will be an important launch, an important initiative, the launch of the Ontario Materials Marketplace. We're very excited to be here today to launch the initiative. As the CEO of the Council of the Great Lakes region, we feel that this is a very important initiative today in the Great Lakes as we try to look at shifting to a circular economy in this very important region. And before I introduce our other panelists and guests, let me just give you a bit of background about the Great Lakes region. As many of you may know, the Great Lakes region, which represents 8 states, New York to Minnesota, as well as the Canadian provinces of Ontario and Quebec, represents roughly a $6 trillion economy. And if you were to think about that in country terms, this would be the 3rd largest economy in the world behind the United States and China. So, but in many respects, this region is by far the most important economic region to the United States and Canada, if not North America. It's also a region that is responsible for 1/3 of the Canadian American workforce, supporting roughly 51 million jobs between the two countries. It's an economic region that drives so many different sectors and industries, whether it's the automotive industry and the Great Lakes Auto Cluster that was founded in part by the Auto Pact in 1965, to aerospace and space technology, to agriculture and agri-food, to health sciences and life sciences in the region. This region in many ways is a key driver of those economies and clusters. But we also can't forget that this region is an incredibly important natural resource. The Great Lakes themselves represent roughly 21% of the world's surface freshwater and 84% of North America's surface freshwater. And so we need to work especially hard across borders and across sectors to make sure that we're protecting the Great Lakes and this special resource for future generations. At the end of the day, and a lot of people forget this, only 1% of the waters of the Great Lakes are renewed annually by precipitation, runoff, and groundwater. So they are a finite and precious resource. And we're excited to be working on issues like the circular economy for one reason. When you look at the Great Lakes today, we find that roughly 20 million pounds or 10 million kilograms of plastics find their way into the Great Lakes every year. And principally, that's the result of poor recycling across the region, but also the need to remind consumers about the products they buy, how they use them, but more importantly, how they dispose of them and how they recycle them. And so the circular economy for us as an organization is growing in importance in how we bring government together, industry, academia, the broader nonprofit sector, to really do the things to put in place the enabling policies, regulations that will allow us to achieve more closed loop systems and circularity. The innovations through product design that will enhance recyclability of our products that we use. Infrastructure, making sure that we're investing in our infrastructure to make sure that as many communities and citizens across the region have access to high quality recovery and recycling systems. So we're very excited to be focusing on circular economy, and the Ontario Materials Marketplace is just one element of what we're trying to do to really, again, try to close the loop in terms of material waste flows in the region. And so thank you again for joining us today. I hope you really enjoy the discussion that we'll have today and learn more about the launch and how you can participate. And with that, I want to turn to our first guest, who's Melissa DeYoung, who's the Director of Policy and Programs at Pollution Probe, which is a very, very close partner of the Council of the Great Lakes region. And she's going to talk a little bit about the work that they do, their history when it comes to circularity and waste management. And so, Melissa, over to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Great. No, thank you, Mark. Really pleased to be here today and to have an opportunity to speak a little bit about Pollution Probe and our long history with reducing waste. We're really excited about the launch of the Ontario Materials Marketplace because we see it as a critical step in helping to transition to a more circular economy in the Great Lakes region. So, sorry, delayed on my slide share here. There we go. So for those of you not familiar with Pollution Probe, we are one of Canada's longest standing environmental organizations. We were established back in 1969, and we just reached a significant milestone, having celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. Our mission is to find substantive and enduring solutions to pressing environmental issues, and we really do this by defining issues through research and making sure that they're based in evidence and sound science, by building understanding through education and doing a lot of knowledge translation, and by advocating for practical solutions. We work collaboratively with the full spectrum of stakeholders who are interested or working on an issue. And our core program areas currently are circular economy and Great Lakes, and transportation and energy. Again, we're excited about the marketplace because it really aligns with efforts that the organization has been making since its inception related to waste reduction. Back when the organization was formed in 1969, litter and waste were major issues in the province of Ontario. There'd been sort of an explosion of waste generation in the 50s and 60s, and a shift in consumer habits, proliferation of consumer packaging, and sort of this idea that there were unlimited resources. So waste really became a cornerstone of Pollution Probe's early agenda. And they continued the work into the 70s, starting with the beginning of the concept of a waste hierarchy, and coining the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle, which is now used all over the world, and in many ways may be more relevant today than even back in the 1970s. The organization dedicated a lot of efforts to reducing and reusing, including an early pilot project related to materials matching in the community. But I think probably we are most well known for our efforts related to the development of Ontario's Blue Box program. So at the time, there was really a lot of concern around sort of landfill capacity and contaminated ground surface water and emissions from incineration, and that's sort of where the program built from. Today, we've sort of shifted to recognizing that there's a need for a more holistic approach to addressing waste, whereas a lot of our early efforts focused on public engagement and awareness. We've now tried to ensure that everything that we're working towards has some sort of effective solution. We sort of our re-entry into working on plastic in the last couple of years has been around freshwater ecosystems, and particularly the Great Lakes, and that stemmed from increasing concern related to the amount of plastics and microplastics that were being found in the lakes. But we've since built out, we're addressing a lot of a more broader range of issues related to waste at this point in time. Our approach is really fourfold. We look to provide thought leadership and advance sort of long-term solutions and fill information gaps through research efforts. And we look to implement change that can have a sort of an immediate impact. All of the work we do ties in some way to consideration for how it can inform future policy development. And really key for us is public engagement and how we can provide individuals, families, and communities with the tools they need to make informed decisions and become part of the solution. I think another key point in terms of our recent work is that there has been a shift in the last few years to recognize issues related to waste, both at the federal and the provincial government level. The federal government released its Oceans Plastics Charter. There was the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment strategy on zero plastic waste and the accompanying action plan. And in Ontario, the Made in Ontario plan really highlighted waste reduction as a key priority for the province, and identified a commitment on their part to transition the residential Blue Box program to one that is using extended producer responsibility. This slide really is just an outline of some of the projects that we're working on. I'm not going to go into detail here because I understand we have time considerations, but just to give a clear sort of indication that we are trying to work across the 4 areas that I just mentioned, working on some potential regulatory amendments around pre-production plastic pellets, educational tour at the zoo, which really speaks to public engagement, and a couple of projects in partnership with the Council of the Great Lakes region through their support from Environment and Climate Change Canada that really touch on all 4 of those areas. And for that reason, we're really excited again to be a part of this. Ontario Materials Marketplace. So again, just touching on the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector in Ontario, it is responsible for the majority of waste that is generated within the province. And we know that there are significantly lower diversion rates than we see with residential programs. The data is, there are different data points in terms of what this looks like, but some estimates put the material generation from the IC&I sector between 60 and 70%, with diversion being about 13% of what the province diverts in total. So again, there's a real opportunity here within the province of Ontario to look at solutions for waste management that, again, touch on some of those points that I was just mentioning. And we really feel that the materials marketplace is one of those. It is able to sort of fill knowledge gaps by generating data with key metrics. In terms of action, it's creating end markets for difficult to manage materials. Lessons learned from this platform, we expect, will really inform policy discussions and the ability to advocate for practical solutions moving forward, both federally and provincially. And again, we see that this program can really be leveraged to focus in on some of the success stories that are happening out there in terms of waste management. And that's where we're really excited to see sort of what comes out of the program. So I will leave it there, and I'm going to hand it back to Mark. But again, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to support the Ontario Materials Marketplace and looking forward to contributing to its success.
That's great. Thanks, Melissa. And we're certainly going to have a Q&A period at the end of all the presentations. And if anybody has any questions of Melissa and the great work that her and her team and Pollution Probe are doing, I'm sure she would love to hear from you. I also wanted to take this moment before I turn it over to Daniel to thank Environment and Climate Change Canada. We wouldn't be able to launch the project without their support, and I want to thank them for contributing to the success of the project so far. I know many of our collaborators from Environment and Climate Change Canada are on the line today. And so with that, I want to turn it over next to Daniel Keitzer from the United States Business Council for Sustainable Development. And Daniel is going to walk us through their experience with the material marketplace. They are the creators of the marketplace and have a vast experience so far in terms of its implementation in the United States. And Daniel will then also spend a little bit of time walking us through how the marketplace works and how people in Ontario will be able to interact with it, but also more importantly, how participants in Ontario who do choose to interact with it will be able to connect with existing marketplaces in Michigan and Ohio right across the board. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn the mic, so to speak, over to Daniel for his presentation. And also want to take a moment just before he starts to thank him for his leadership in getting us to where we are today and setting up the website, and really excited about that collaboration as we go forward. So Daniel, over to you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so my presentation should be on the screen now. But yeah, thanks so much again for inviting us to join today for this very important launch. And we're very grateful to be working with you, Mark, and CGLR, and Melissa and Pollution Probe, and everybody else in Ontario. So I'll just give a quick overview of the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development and our Materials Marketplace program, and some of our history and work here in the space. So the U.S. Business Council was founded in 1992, and we've been working on sustainability and in particular on waste and material sustainability issues for over 25 years. So we have quite a bit of history in this space, but all of our work, the kind of foundational backbone of what we do is all about collaboration. We're trying to bring industry and businesses together that don't typically work with one another to look at some of these challenges that are out there, and then through that collaboration be able to uncover some very unique and innovative solutions. So just kind of quickly at a glance, like all of our organizations here, we work across a couple of different focus areas. Today, I'll just be touching on our circular economy work, but do know we also do some work in the carbon space, the water space, the energy space, and have a pretty diverse portfolio of things. But really, our leader and our flagship under that circular economy umbrella is our materials marketplace program. We do this work across North America, but regionally in a couple of areas, which you can see highlighted here. So we have a number of programs in the Great Lakes. It's kind of our highest density of folks, and I'll get into some detail on that here later. But we also have some projects down in Texas where I'm based, in Tennessee, and then we're working on some other expansion opportunities in other parts of the US as well. So just as a little bit of a framing and a little bit of a background, anyone that's done circular economy work or has heard about circular economy has probably seen this diagram, this sort of big picture look at what a circular economy can and should mean. I'm not going to, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on all of these different webs here, but what I will show and kind of take away is to highlight the areas that the materials marketplace really focuses on. So, and that's the reuse and redistribution, refurbishment and remanufacturing, and then finally recycling. And so through this program, we're trying to create new loops and new connections that help bring these products back into useful life and useful service. And how that looks on the ground can go in a number of different directions, but this is the kind of piece of the web that we're really looking to facilitate and looking to build here. So zooming on the marketplace and kind of on our main target audience, I would say you could kind of separate who we're trying to work with into three major categories. Manufacturers and manufacturing has been and always will be kind of the foundation of our program. This is a really great tool for manufacturing companies that have waste and byproduct materials to find solutions for those that are not the landfill. But it's also a really useful tool to look at materials that are out there that you may be able to bring back into different products and processes. Recycling companies, the second very important user group within the marketplace. So recycling companies really form that second side of the ecosystem of taking materials in and processing those materials back into a usable form. And we're working with recycling companies across every different material category, from plastics to paper to metals. But I definitely can't overstate the importance of that user group here to this whole ecosystem. And then finally, this piece on entrepreneurship and economic development. There's always opportunities in the circular economy space for materials innovation and for companies to come in and do new things with the stuff that we're seeing and uncovering through this program. So we love having those folks involved here on the platform too, to look at these materials and kind of innovate on these materials in new ways. Overall, we're looking at around 2,200 businesses and organizations to date that are on the materials marketplace platform across North America. And we've, through our platform, have helped divert over 5,300 tons of material to higher and better use. That number is probably a little higher. We're pretty diligent about our data gathering, but there's always activities out there that sometimes fall through the cracks. But that 5,300 tons is all verified and stuff that we've confirmed with participants. So pretty good impact numbers, but we definitely have a long ways to go to continue boosting that up. Just a quick look at some of our users. You can see them in the small corner of this map here. Again, the majority of our folks are coming from the manufacturing sector, about 30%. And then there's a decent chunk here in the waste recycling sectors, and then it's fairly well spread out across a number of other sectors after that. So a pretty diverse group of folks, and pretty diverse across different sizes of companies as well. We have very large companies like General Motors and Steelcase and Herman Miller, all the way down to those entrepreneurs and innovators that may only have 1 or 2 folks on staff right now. But we love again, we love having those folks involved to look at these things in new ways. Just to highlight again our presence in the Great Lakes, you can see lots of dots on the map in Ohio and Michigan, and hopefully soon we'll see even more up in Ontario as well. So, one of the aspects of this that Mark touched on, I think there's a lot of economic opportunity here to help facilitate some of these transactions across border and to help connect the dots with companies that are working kind of Great Lakes wide and that have a footprint across the Great Lakes. And so I think this is a really just nice way of highlighting the interconnectedness of these network and of these different projects that we have going on. Listings super diverse, across the board. We've got some pretty high activity in the plastic space. The kind of business furniture, fixtures, and equipment space is also fairly popular. Wood materials, so that could be wood packaging like pallets or crates, all the way up to some of your more industrial byproducts in that wood category. Decent slice of pie in the packaging category as well. So this is really a platform to help uncover solutions for all sorts of different materials. So it's not dedicated to just one particular stream, but you can kind of see here some of the trends on what we see more of. In the marketplace, and I'll show this in a second, you can create listings for available materials or wanted materials. So if you have something available that your company is producing, you can post that up there. But if you have a particular material that your company is looking to source, you can also post that as well. So that'll, and that kind of helps, expose where those things are and kind of show that there's a potential end market for that as well. A decent mix of materials are available on an ongoing basis versus a one-time basis. And I'll show in the marketplace in a second how you can designate that. And then storage and collection kind of across the board, lots of different ways of storing things and transporting things. But again, a lot of diversity in how our users are categorizing these listings and dealing with those materials. Transactions to date, so across this platform, North America wide, we've now moved, actually it looks like the numbers have bumped up a little bit since I looked at this. So we've now moved about 10 million pounds of material. Should have updated that on the old slide. And then calculating that based on cubic feet, about 81K of cubic feet in terms of volume. Net value overall, so if we look at the savings from these transactions and the savings on landfill diversion, a little over $1 million US dollars saved through this. We love data. We love slicing and dicing this. If there's any questions about how this can be sliced and diced, I'd be happy to dig into the details on the Q&A. But this is just kind of an overall big picture of what we're looking at to date. We love working with companies on increasing use of recycled content. I won't go into a whole lot of details here, but do know that the marketplace spurred a lot of very cool conversations with manufacturers looking to increase use of recycled content. And we have a number of different partners across North America that are helping us grow and scale this. So we've had a partnership with UL for a while now, looking at some of the third-party validation services for verifying materials and what's in materials, verifying recycled content in products, a few other standards on circularity and waste diversion, which is always super important. In addition to Environment and Climate Change Canada, we're also working in Michigan with MEDC, and Michigan Eagle. They're in Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. Our partners down in Tennessee, Austin. So a number of folks have helped us get to where we are today, and we're very appreciative of having those relationships. I won't go into a whole lot of detail here, but just to touch on a couple of transactions that we have. This is one of our largest transactions to date, moving some materials from an electronics recycling company in Wisconsin to a ceramic tile manufacturer in Tennessee. That's about 400,000 pounds of material a month, so a very significant transaction going into to produce new ceramic tiles. We're doing quite a bit of work in the film plastic space, and a couple of Great Lakes companies here just to highlight. EFS Plastics, a great Ontario-based company doing some very cool work in the film plastic space. Petoskey Plastics in Michigan, Revolution Plastics also in Michigan, Trex, Emmett County Recycling. So a number of really cool Great Lakes companies doing some really neat stuff on the film plastics end market. Cascade Engineering down in Grand Rapids, Michigan, doing some really great work with HDPE and getting that back into new products. Down in Texas, this is kind of an example of a smaller scale transaction, which we still love to see, but this was some excess construction materials that went to a local farm to produce some new buildings on site. I became an oyster shell expert over the course of a couple of months, trying to find some new uses for oyster shells, also down in Austin, Texas. So, we love working with just, all sorts of different materials. And I think, in addition to the diversity of our network, the diversity of the projects that we can undertake through this is also, a really great thing to see. So no limits on what y'all can post. We want to see it all and we want to work with it all. I'm going to stop here and just jump over into the marketplace itself for a second and show you all how you can get engaged and get involved. So our project website here, ontario.materialsmarketplace.org. If you go to this website and click the Get Involved link or scroll down to the bottom, you can use this quick form here to request an invitation. We'll do a little bit of vetting to make sure you're part of a legitimate company or organization and have a legitimate interest in the space. But then after that, you'll receive an invitation to create an account on the materials marketplace. Once that account is created, this is what it'll look like for you. So you can see here, we have a number of different listings that you'll be able to browse and see. You can search for materials by name or by keyword. You can also search based on location. So you can find materials and listings that are close to you in proximity, which for some of these transactions and some of these materials is obviously super important to cut down on transportation costs and the like. So lots of different ways of slicing and dicing that. You can also click on our different categories here to see different materials within different categories. And those all drop out and shift into various subcategories here. Posting listings is super quick and easy. You hit that blue button in the top, find the resource type that you're looking to post. So say I wanted to create a listing for wood pallets that I have available. I'll just go through these different prompts and you can see some questions here. All the questions that we ask are customized based on resource type. So if you're looking to post pallets, you'll get some different questions about those pallets than you would if you were posting bales of plastic, for example. But it's super straightforward and easy to do. And you can do all this from your phone. So if you're out on the loading dock and you see a pile of things that you want to get into the marketplace, you can easily jump in and do that as well. If you see a material of interest and you want to get in contact with the company, you can do that also all through the platform, and you'll get notifications in your inbox and whatnot. Just click on the listing, click Start Conversation, and that'll kick things off between you and the other party. So that's the marketplace kind of in a nutshell. Happy to get into more detail as we go along in the Q&A. But again, we're really excited to bring this platform to Ontario and see what sort of impact we can create. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Mark.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel. And thanks for that great overview of the history of the marketplace and obviously how people can easily engage with the Ontario Materials Marketplace. And we certainly hope that people will do so. It's very easy to use and there's no cost to doing that on the front end. Really appreciate your overview. And I'm sure there'll be many questions once we get to the Q&A. And just before I turn it over to Ray Howard from General Motors, I do want to remind our guests that we will be having a Q&A on Zoom. As we all know, it's fairly easy to ask a question and a number of different ways of doing that. So for us, if you click on participants and you'll see a button that says raise hand. And so if you want to ask a question once we get to the Q&A, raise your hand and we will turn to you and give you an opportunity to ask your question. It's as straightforward as that, and we hope that there will be lots of questions of the panelists. And so with that, right now, I want to turn it over to Ray Howard. Ray Howard is joining us from General Motors. She is the mission lead for materials management and is doing a lot of great work with General Motors around sustainability. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Ray, and she'll be talking a little bit about their sustainability priorities, but also how they've interacted as a company with the Michigan materials marketplace and why they see value in supporting this kind of platform. And for those of you from GM Canada, if you're participating, we certainly hope that you'll consider supporting us on the Ontario Materials Marketplace platform and truly making this a binational opportunity for General Motors. So Ray, over to you.
So much for that interest, and I want to share my screen. Hopefully my technology works. I am having some work done at my home, so you might hear some background noise, and that background noise is some work that's being. And we will make sure to get.
That's great, Ray. I think you're on mute, and if you could reshare your presentation would be great.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. We can see the
Okay,
presentation. Fantastic.
Excellent. All right, wonderful. I'm glad that you can hear everything. And again, thank you, Mark, for this opportunity to talk a little bit about General Motors and our environmental sustainability goals. Note that at General Motors, our corporate vision means that we see a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. In order to do that, we have to determine what are some better things that we can do to impact the world and society. And everything that we're doing now focuses on our 5 pillars of sustainability. They are sustainable materials, zero waste, carbon scope 1, energy, scope 2, and water. And you'll notice that all of these items rolled into zero emissions. In addition to that, each of these items is related to some of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals are also listed here on the screen. They are goal number 12, responsible consumption and production. Number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Number 13, climate action, and number 6, water. Earlier this year, our CEO, Mary Barra, came out at Capital Markets Day and talked about some of our environmental targets. They include 100% renewable energy by 2040 globally, and in the United States by 2030, enabling 100% end-of-life battery recyclability. And note that right now we've already achieved that goal, so we're very excited and impressed that we can share that we do have that, and that is for both our electric vehicle batteries as well as batteries on our traditional combustion engine vehicles. We have updated our sustainable content goal to be 50% sustainable material content on our new vehicles launching in the year 2030 and beyond. We also have greater than 85% vehicle reuse or recycling. In order to do that, we came up with some internal focus groups. Some of them specifically focus on metals, and those would include things like steel and aluminum. In plastics, we have various types of plastics, so they would be some of the commodity plastics like polypropylene, as well as some of the higher, more engineered plastics like POM or ABS or some of the others. In addition to that, we're working very closely with our supply base on supplier relations and looking at how we can bring innovations more together as an alignment and more of a collaboration. We're looking at additional tools, and some of those tools include ways for us to compare different types of materials as we're developing them, in addition to more life cycle analysis of newer materials that we're considering bringing into the organization. In general, sustainable materials for us would include everything throughout the manufacturing process. Here is one example where we're talking about using plastic bottles. These would be typical like water bottles or drink bottles. And as we see on the screen starting on the far left, this is where the plastic bottle waste begins. We go through the shredding. We also extrude some of those fibers out. They become the PET fibers, and you can see we can make them in different types of colors. We bale them, and after we bale them, we can also repelletize them, and we can use them for specific products. One product that is shown here is a wheel well liner. So typically on your vehicle, you have 4 wheels, and inside of or just behind where your tires or wheels are, there's sometimes a plastic piece or sometimes it's felt. In the case of this example, it will be a plastic piece, and that's where it would show on your vehicle. So just one example of how we are using circularity within General Motors. And on my next page, I will talk a little bit about some other types of ways that we're applying circular economy principles. For example, we have lots of plastic caps and shipping aids that are used to bring different types of products into our various types of plants. So we have vehicle assembly plants as well as intermediate product plants where we make things like engines and castings and some of those things. Those plastic shipping aids can be turned into radiator shrouds, and some of those are used on some of our full-size pickup trucks. I mentioned a little bit earlier about the wheel well liner. In addition to that, the tires themselves, sometimes we shred some of the tires that we use for our testing, and this is vehicle testing. We take some of those and we use them for water and air baffles in different types of vehicles. Baffles for us are used for multiple reasons. Some of them are used to make sure that we have structural thickness within some of our vehicles, and some are to make sure that we have certain pathways for different types of expansion materials. In the center, we show melted scrap aluminum shavings from machining some of our transmission casings, and we can reuse those into more transmission casings. I talked a little bit about water bottles that are used for wheel well liners. In addition to that, we partner with Empowerment Zone and we make coat insulation for the homeless. So those are some of the things that we actually use when we are looking at making more circular economy at General Motors. In addition to that, we can take some of our shipping crates and we use them for planters. So we have several gardens within the Detroit area that we have reused some of these shipping crates in order to have areas where we can have lots of new vegetation. So overall at General Motors, we like to look at ways to apply circular economy principles, as well as looking at different types of sustainable materials. And in our future methods, it's truly looking at how we can compare the environmental impacts of some of our new materials and determining which are the best ones we would like to use on our vehicles. And as you notice in our manufacturing process, there are several different steps and several opportunities to reuse some of the materials. Sometimes we have plans already that you can see on the screen, and sometimes we're looking for opportunities to determine what are some better uses for these items once we have used them for shipping or some other areas. As we're talking about reusing some of these, sometimes we put some of these materials on Material Marketplace. So you might notice some of these, particularly in the Michigan and also the Ohio marketplace. And as we're getting to launch the one for Ontario, there may be some of those as well. So with that, we've put several things on there. GM requires several types of or levels of insurance. So sometimes it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to get some of our materials to those who are in need and trying to use some of them. However, we're looking to partner with some of companies who are interested in developing or using some of things that we have used in our production or also on our shipping sites. So actually, if you have a use for some of these items, please let us know. We're looking for innovative approaches, and we're, again, looking for more collaboration and alignment. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm available to answer questions.
That's great, Ray, and thank you for that wonderful presentation and that expose of the great things that General Motors are doing from a sustainability standpoint. Obviously, a very, as I mentioned off the top, a very important company for the region, and obviously an important user of the marketplace in the United States. So thank you for sharing your experience. And we look forward to hopefully, as I said before, deepening our relationship with GM Canada and other companies in Ontario as we get the Ontario Materials Marketplace going. And so with that, it's now question and answer time. As I mentioned before, it's really easy to ask a question, and all you need to do is click on participants and raise your hand. I'm sure there are many questions, and so please use this opportunity for the next 15 or so minutes while we have the panelists to ask any question you want about the marketplace or any of the other presentations that we've seen so far. I will kick one off before we go to the registrants, the participants. With Daniel, maybe you can just explain a little bit about how you're tracking how you're tracking transactions, how you facilitate transactions behind the scenes, and just give folks a sense in terms of what happens with that relationship once it's created, and is there a buyer-seller relationship that happens behind the scenes? How does that work?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So we have a number of different facilitators and staff that's looking at the marketplace and looking for those opportunities and seeing those opportunities to connect companies here. And so as we see that and uncover that, so I showed that ABS scrap as an example. If I know that there's a company out there that's looking to process ABS scrap, I'll pull that listing and send that to whoever that is. And there's a handful of other folks that are doing the exact same thing, and kind of actively pushing out those recommendations for folks. Once a conversation is started in the platform between companies, given all of the different requirements and ways that relationship can move forward, we try to kind of step back and let that proceed organically between companies. So as Ray said, if there are certain requirements from an insurance perspective or from any other perspective, we want to let that vetting process happen naturally between companies. If we do see that a conversation is stalled or that somebody has a question that they don't have an answer for, our staff can still see that and chime in and help out as needed. So we're there to kind of provide that helping hand, but for the most part, a lot of those conversations kind of happen naturally. From a reporting perspective, once a transaction is completed and materials have actually moved from point A to point B, we do have a mechanism in the marketplace to report the details of those transactions back to us, which is again super important for our data collection and showing our impact of this program. So as conversations are started, we have a process to follow up with users to get that information back. But you'll also see in the marketplace up at the top, there's a button that says report transaction, and we certainly encourage you all to use that frequently and often to get data back to us.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel. And I see our first question from the audience, and I want to turn it over to Laura Duarte. She has a couple questions for both Daniel and Ray, I believe. So Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much. So my name is Laura. I'm calling from the UK. So the first question for Daniel is, it seems not very easy for people to post materials, but then how can we help, for example, entrepreneurs to identify what they can do with X materials? So you were giving the example about the oyster shells. Like, I think that there is a gap on knowledge in terms of, okay, what can I do with oyster shells and with any type of material that is posted in the platform? Have you found any solution or a way to address this?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you that there's definitely a knowledge gap out there, and I do think that there can be a lot more to be done to help tell those stories and seed those ideas and plant those seeds with entrepreneurs. That's a really important area of new content development for us, and things that we want to put out through our website and through some of our additional programming. So as those ideas come up, we certainly want to be be putting those out there to as wide of network as possible. For entrepreneurs that are in the platform and that are looking for materials that they might want to work with, a couple of categories and filters that I would recommend starting with. One, make sure that the material you're looking at is being produced in an ongoing kind of high volume fashion, and ideally have more than one company to help kind of plant that seed for scale of whatever it is that you're looking to do. And then yeah, just looking to make sure that there's other companies and other processes that are producing that. But yeah, I'd love to collaborate further on kind of getting some of those ideas out there to our broader network. So we can follow up kind of after this on how to do that most effectively.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Can I ask my second question?
We've got a long list of questions. If it's okay with you, Laura, why don't I go back, if possible? I know you have a question for Ray, so why don't I work through some of the other questions, and if we have time, we'll circle back to you. Is that okay?
Definitely, for sure. Thank you very much.
So thanks. So the next question I have is from Sarah Marshall at Nova Chemicals, and it's in the chat box. And so I'll read this to you, Daniel. I don't know if you can see it. But it says, how locally focused is the marketplace? For example, for companies from Quebec, can companies from Quebec buy on the Ontario Materials Marketplace, and do US and Ontario marketplaces connect?
Yeah, so everything, all of our regional programs, it's all unified on the same North American platform. So a business in Quebec could look at materials in Ontario and identify those opportunities. And we've seen a number of those transactions happening across pretty wide geographic distances. And as long as the economics and the environmental impact is still on the positive, those are transactions we certainly love to see. For some materials, again, that transaction element can really eat into the impact and into the viability. So that's why we do have that location search in there, so you can see what's closest to you first. But yeah, we don't restrict that kind of local focus in any way.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel, and thanks for that great question. And I would say that we've already started conversations with Daniel and his organization about perhaps even spanning marketplaces in other parts of the Great Lakes. We would love to talk to officials from the Quebec government if they're online. I think there are one or two about maybe looking at Quebec as another place for a marketplace. And there's certainly lots of potential to moving goods across borders. And that brings me to the next question. In fact, it's from one of our Siegler's board members, Wayne Garnon-Williams. And his question is the materials marketplace open for cross-border purchases? If so, what is the trade treatment of this transaction under the USMCA? And I'm going to start by helping a little bit with this question. I know it's something that Daniel and I are starting to explore with the launch of the Ontario Materials Marketplace and how it will interact with Michigan. And one of the great things about being a pilot is there's lots of things that we want to listen and learn about, over the course of the next year. And so we might not have all the answers as we start, but I know it's something that we're giving a lot of thought to. But Daniel, and possibly Melissa, if you want to jump in, but Daniel, have you given any thought to, how these systems link across the border, and what are some of the trade implications or differences in terms of how recyclable materials need to be considered or looked at, as part of the marketplace development?
Yeah. As you said, Mark, I think there's a lot of kind of forward-looking work there that I'm really interested to dig in on. We haven't done a ton of work in that space, but I know we have partners on both sides of the border that are really interested in kind of furthering that conversation. So as this pilot continues to develop, we'll definitely have more to share and more to build on with that. In terms of materials, again, moving back and forth, we, as of now, we're not super hands-on or prescriptive in saying what can and can't move. So if you're a company that's looking to source materials across border in either direction, we would look to you and your kind of knowledge and expertise in that make sure that, that's appropriate and works underneath all the right frameworks.
That's great. And Melissa, is there anything you want to add there? If I remember correctly, in the Made in Ontario plan and the special advisor that was appointed by Ontario, there's some talk about the role that Ontario could play as a regional leader in recycling and processing. Is there anything else that you might want to add from a cross-border trade standpoint?
I'm not sure I can speak to the Made in Ontario plan in any detail, but I think you're definitely right that that's something that was highlighted as being potentially of interest for the province. I know, again, just to echo what Daniel's saying, it's something that we obviously have an interest in if there are ways to sort of expand this and take into consideration some of those cross-border issues. We're certainly excited about that opportunity as well.
That's great. Thanks, Melissa. There is a question. It's a private question about whether or not the presentation slides can be made available. We'll certainly do our level best to do that, either through a thank you email or on our website, councilgreatlakesregion.org. So yes, we'll certainly be trying to make the presentations available. We have another question in the chat room from Tribune Persuade. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. The question is we have operations in Tennessee and are part of a state-run materials exchange there. Is there an extension of that program into Canada, or is the Tennessee Materials Exchange separate? Daniel, do you want to try and take that on? You might be more familiar with Tennessee and that program than I am.
Yeah, so it's likely that your facilities in Tennessee are also on this same materials marketplace platform. So that user base will be the same in Tennessee as it is for Ontario. What I would encourage you to do as you're looking to bring your Ontario facilities into the project is to send some invites and make sure that those folks that are operating up there are also on the platform. And then we can get some listings up and kind of get that facility online in the same way. But again, it's all the same unified North American platform under the hood. And just to elaborate on that again, what these regional efforts, the Ontario Materials Marketplace, the Ohio Materials Marketplace, that really just means that we're putting a much more dedicated focus on outreach and bringing businesses in those regions into the program. Some more dedicated resources on that facilitation component and helping to nurture these transactions. But everything is connected across North America on the platform itself.
That's great, Daniel. And I'm gonna, before we go to some other questions, I'm gonna loop back to Laura because she does have a question for Ray, and I do want to bring Ray back into the conversation. And so the question from Laura in the chat room is, thank you for sharing your presentation. How is GM identifying how they could use plastic caps, for examples for radiators? I guess she's wanting to know how easy it is to identify how waste can be used for different, I guess, different business lines within General Motors. So that's the question from Laura, who we heard from earlier.
Okay, so for us to consider reusing some of the plastic caps or other shipping aids, it's really a collaborative effort. So we work with both the companies or the tier ones that are providing the shipping the products into our locations, as well as with others who are looking at reusing some of these items. So with our tier one suppliers, we need to truly understand what are the materials that some of those shipping aids are composed of. So for example, is it polypropylene? Is it polyethylene? Is it another type of material? And even with that, what are some of the grades? And with that, what are some of the other components that use some of those specific materials? As we looked at that radiator shroud used that exact same type of plastic resin material. So we were able to use a smaller percentage of that into the final assembly of that new product. So it's looking at a balance of truly what is coming into our sites and also what are some of the products that we're trying to make and using a collaborative approach. So it's definitely something that we all work together with our tier one suppliers, as well as some innovators who are looking at using our products.
That's great, Ray, and thank you for the question, Laura. We are at the top of the hour. I'm going to try and facilitate a couple more questions just before we close. The next question is from David Messer, again in the chat room, and it says, I see the platform includes organic material, but not eatable material. Could the marketplace support eatable food products or food production byproducts? Obviously, there are complexities, but curious why this hasn't been a focus to date. Daniel, I think you're probably best to answer that question.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually do have a subcategory under that organics heading that separates it into edible to humans and not edible to humans. So that designation is there in the marketplace. But I would say you are correct in that observation that it hasn't been a huge focal point for us up to now. And I think some of those complexities in the food recovery space are a part of that. I would love to kind of dig in deeper into that world. There's a handful of other organizations also that are doing some really good work in the food recovery space. But if there's a gap that that we could help fill, I'd be more than happy to look at that and kind of put that up higher on our radar, since it is a super important area to work with. Our transactions to date on organics have been more on that non-edible side, on some of the like brewery byproducts and things, but yeah, that would be a really good area for us to focus.
Great, and I think we'll take one last question here, and I'll just and then I'll finish with some important reminders. So the next question is from Sumantra Dataray, again to Daniel. He's popular today, and he should be. It says, Daniel, if a transaction is not completed or reported, is any data gathered from the facilitation process? And she also wanted to know in an earlier question, is the data upload voluntary?
Yeah, so right now transaction reporting is voluntary. It's going to be a really important focus for us for new feature development as we move forward with additional platform updates. We're going to be really zeroing in on that to make that process easier and simpler. But right now that is voluntary. And then that second question on data around partial transactions. Right now we're kind of gleaning very basic information. So we know that a transaction was started on X material type. But that's really as far as we go at this stage. But that'll also be a focus for us, because I think it is just as important to have data on what doesn't work as what does work, so we can put that out to our network and really feed that back into our facilitation process. So probably the area of the most focus for us is as software developers at the moment. But yeah, I'd love any feedbacks or any thoughts on how we can continue to improve that as well.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel. And I think we'll start to come to a close. And I want to first start by saying how much we have valued your participation in all of the questions today. We certainly value your feedback as well. You'll notice in the chat room that we have a survey of sorts to help us learn more about what we can do in launching the materials marketplace, and obviously your feedback about other issues that you would like us to focus on in the coming months. We'll also be including that in the follow-up thank you email. It will take you about 2 minutes to fill out the form, so please do fill it out and send back your comments to us, as they're really important. And just to bring the webinar and the launch to a close, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We had upwards at one point over 100 participants, and we think that that's a great reflection of obviously the value, the importance that the Ontario Materials Marketplace pilot will be able to play in Ontario, as Melissa indicated, as we start to focus more on diversion solutions and zero waste strategies in Ontario and Canada. And obviously the really important opportunity to connect those conversations across borders and really try and focus on creating a circular Great Lakes and hopefully a Great Lakes marketplace to underpin that. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We really do want everybody to check out the website. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a manufacturer, an institution, if you're a recycler, really think about joining the marketplace platform. Sign up. It literally takes a few minutes, and we would really like you to start engaging with the platform and helping us learn over the next year about how we can make it better and start closing the loop. And in terms of next steps, what we'll be doing following the launch is reaching out to our members and our partners in the region, particularly industry associations and others, to do more tailored presentations to their members and different sectors. Again, with a focus on IC&I and plastics, you know, all with the goal of trying to onboard people onto the platform and to get them to use the platform. So thank you again for participating today and joining us for this launch. And we'll be certainly in touch with some more information about next steps. And again, I really hope that you'll take the time to learn about the marketplace and join the marketplace today, and if not in the coming days. So with that, thank you, and thank you for spending an hour with us. Please do fill out the form and provide your feedback. And we look forward to staying in touch with you as the marketplace develops over the next year. Thank you. Great.